Hello everybody, welcome back to the Crazy Mayday channel. What I'm going to try to do here today is I want to show everybody kind of, this is stuff's been done before. Other people, with campers have kind of done this upgrade. So I just want to show you how I do the one on our particular camper, and basically a little different. I kind of try to make it so it's not so more or less invasive to the camper where it's going to cause more damage just by putting this little accessory on. Um, but I do add one little extra that I haven't seen anybody else do, just to give a little bit more longevity to the actual light strip itself. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I already did one, so I'm going to let you guys follow along with the install for the other side. So what we're looking at here is the back of the camper. You got pretty much your factory light, like everybody. Yours might be a little different in shape and design or whatever. So the way I did this Opt7 light strip, these are going to basically be the same thing that the normal tail light will do, but it will give you the option of reverse also. So how I installed it is basically it comes with just a little sticky back on the back of the light itself. And then how I did it was basically I came down and just 90'd it, and then basically just kind of notched out the side of the light there. I can get real close so you guys can kind of see. And then basically just resealed the light. Now this light basically kind of comes off, but you have that glue from the factory, so you kind of have to be real careful when you get in here with a razor blade. You don't want to cut into your fiberglass or your Phylon or whatever your camper's typically made out of, which is this thin material, and it's got a clear coat, so basically you don't want to do any damage to it. Wood is basically our enemy for everything. So here you can see is this has a white cover on it basically. And what I'm trying to do with that white cover is basically I want to help keep this light from getting yellowed. So with campers, they sit outside. This material that's made from a kind of like it's like a silicone basically resin that's laid into the lights. It will probably yellow out over time, so I want to help prolong the life of that. And what I ended up getting for this particular cover, and I saved let me see, where is it? Here it is. I saved the cover here, so this is basically, let me see if I can flip the camera around so you guys can see this. So this is one of the cable, sorry, I'm trying to get you in view here, cable hider, and that's the part number there. It's a 1-inch, and basically what that does is it's the outside cover, but it basically kind of clips in right on the outside edge. There's a nice little groove that it basically locks into. Let me see if I can show you over here. It's kind of hard to see, but if I get close enough, there's a tiny little groove you can kind of see. So that basically locks that little white protector in. And now this is something you're not going to want to leave on, obviously, when you're going down the road, because it's going to defeat the purpose of the light. Just more or less for storage when you get back to your house or your storage facility and you want to pop these on. They're a good little thing to maybe throw in one of the storage boxes, keep it kind of stowed away, but easy accessible to get back on for yourself. So alright, without further ado, I want to basically set you guys up, and then let's do the install. Hang tight, we'll be right back. Alright, so what I'm going to basically do is we're just going to kind of trim this back and take our time. You're going to definitely want to make sure you don't cut into your pylon exterior part of your camper. Also, you want to be careful not to cut yourself, slip, so taking your time, kind of keep the razor more or less straight to the actual edge of the light where it meets the actual body of the camper, and just go around. It might take a couple of, tries with the razor. You definitely want to start with a fresh razor blade. So you see I slipped there. This is what you got to be careful. Now they kind of went a little messy with their glue, so I'm going to clean that up with some rubbing alcohol when we're done, and I'll be resealing this. Goes. So once you get it started, you can kind of work your way around. And here it goes. So your sealing glue is basically the thing that makes you struggle the most, but all it is basically a little lens cover. It has just a couple little tabs that kind of lock it over, so it's not really like super hard. If the glue wasn't there, it would just come right off. So I'm going to get you in a little closer here so we can get a look at the internal part of the light so you can see what you'll be working with, and I'll show you how I kind of ran the wires on the other side with this one. Hang tight. Okay, so here you have your light, and it's just 3 wires here. Basically, it's a ground, a running light, and then the brake light is broken when you do the turn signal. This is an LED. The mounting screws are basically these 5 screws right here that just go right into the back of the camper. This little plate basically is held on with these 2 small Phillips screws. So what we're going to do is basically I'm going to take the light, unscrew it from the back of the camper, and then our main wiring harness that comes with your Opt7, these are tailgate basically light strips for the back of pickup trucks. Amazon is where I got this one. They did not give it to me for free. I paid with it with my own money. But you get basically this simple little flat 4 that you can just plug into the back of your typical, pickup truck will have this, or a 7-pin. Doing the installation, if you're not very, if you're not mechanically inclined or you get nervous when it comes to doing wiring, you might want to get what they have is an adapter. Basically this flat 4, they give you the opposite end, and this way you don't have to cut into this plug end, and you can already have the wires pretty much cut for you so you can make your connections. Now in camper wiring, the wires colors are not going to probably match to what you get with this plug, so you're going to have to do a little testing yourself. I use a power probe, is very good. You just gotta kind of figure it out with the wires, because not every kit will tell you what specific wire does what function. And then on this particular set of lights, it has a left and a right blinker function. So with me buying 2 of these lights, I want to tie the 2 connections in this light harness together, so that way when I put my turn signal on, the whole strip will actually light when the blinker is turned on for this left side. I have the right side, those wires are tied together, and basically that way you won't actually only get half the light, basically lighting when you use your turn signal for this particular side. The other wire that is here is basically your reverse light feed. It's the power for this little white wire. That's going to do the reverse function. Now this wire basically would still have to be hooked up, you know, to the reverse side of your pickup truck anyway. That's why they give you a pretty long lead. Campers that typically have, you know, lighting in the back, a lot of them don't have the reverse lights in the camper. So up front where the tongue jack was, I kind of showed you guys where we were doing some work up there. I knew that the 7-pin for the camper harness had the wire there, it just wasn't hooked up. So in pre-planning, I ran a separate set of wires from the front all the way to the back, and that is what I'm going to tie these white wires into. So if you're going to do this mod to your camper, just be aware that you're going to have to run that additional reverse signal wire from the 7-pin back to the back of your camper. Otherwise you won't have any reverse light function. Now this kind of helps, you know, in the event that you guys are backing up, you know, in the dark, or, you know, a low light situation. It comes in very handy. Lighting is, you know, is key when you get into some campgrounds, or if you're boondocking and you need a little extra backing up light when you have, you know, a friend or another family member or significant others helping you. Light is key, because a lot of times these campgrounds are kind of dark, you know, and you're getting there sometimes later at night. Check-ins are always typically a little bit after 3, so, you know, it can get, you know, to be a hassle, like with not being able to see too well, and there's trees and there's branches that you might not be paying attention to because you're looking down low and you're not paying attention to something up high. So backup cameras are great. This camper, we did not get a backup camera. We would just rely on the buddy system, basically. We have some walkie-talkies that we use. In the event that we forget the walkie-talkie, we always grab the cell phone. Everybody, you know, never leaves home without the cell phone. So let's get back to the light here. I'm going to get this removed, and then I'm going to get the wires pulled out. I made myself a little cheat sheet on what each wire color does, not only in the camper end, but actually in the plug end. So we're going to cut this wire, shorten it up because we don't need all this, and then we're going to kind of do a little modification to the light. I'll show you what I do there, and then we'll get these wires stuffed in there. We'll double check our connections and then seal everything back up, and we'll get back to testing this light out, and I'll show you guys what our end result for both sides look like. All right, so hang tight. Let me reset the camera up here so you guys get a good view, and we'll keep going. All right, so I got you back here. So on the end of this pigtail, basically, wire, this is what you get when you buy the actual light itself. So after you've removed that, because I'm hardwiring these in, you have on these specific Opt7 lights, you have the blue, which is going to be your ground, then your red and your black are basically your right and left turn signal wires. So that's what I said when I was talking about before, but we tied them together. Now these are kind of done kind of crappy, but it's just to show you guys this illustration. And then your green wire is basically your running light. So these lights have the 4 functions. Basically your running light, your turn signal, basically once you hit the brakes, it will light up the whole thing bright, so that way you're basically getting an intensity, a little higher intensity light coming back. And then obviously your 4th function is your reverse light. And basically we're going to tie this together. They give you a lot of wire here because they typically know you kind of got to route this down and around and get it, you know, where you got to get it to tie together. So we're going to remove the light here, and we're going to start working on getting these wires pulled out of the camper. We're going to figure out which wires actually are what on this side, and then we'll go ahead and start to snip back this to make the connection internally, so that way all the functions are going to match. Your campers mostly come with these number 2 square drives. If you don't have one, you typically can get one at Lowe's or Home Depot. Just go very easy when you use a power drill like this to the soft outer, you know, skin. You can strip them out really easy. You're going to save your screws because these are going to be reused. I'm going to grab a Phillips, and we're going to just remove these 2 small Phillips screws out of here. That'll just give us more accessibility to get this light wire harness kind of provisioned to go through there, because that's how we're going to kind of do it. We're going to snake this wire back behind here and have it go in behind the light, so that way there's no, you know, anything in the way of this actually performing. This install is not that, I guess, hard to do. It just takes a little time and patience. You do have to have a little bit of electrical knowledge. 12 volt, this is all 12 volt. There's nothing high voltage here that you're going to get super shocked by. You just definitely want to make sure that you take your time, your connections are tight and clean. Add a little bit of good electrical tape, and just double check your connections before you fully crimp everything together. You don't want to have to go back in and do this again. That is the biggest drawback with adding a lot of these, I want to say, aftermarket accessories to your camper. Now, you can spend a boatload of money on the best light that you think is out there. You know, most of the stuff is coming from China, so if this thing fails probably within a year, you're gonna kind of be upset. We can only hope that it will last a good while. That's why I added these extra light cover protectors, so that this stuff doesn't get yellowed and fade out. You know, just trying to keep it as long lasting as possible. You would almost want to just do this one time and have it last for the life of the camper, but be realistic, it probably won't. So doing the install with it being is less invasive to the camper. You don't want to drill holes, you don't want to screw this to the actual body of the camper. It's just self adhesive. It's just double 3M adhesive. Cleaning the surface is really key, using rubbing alcohol. I used a good Windex and really double checked, made sure it was super clean, because it's just inevitable that this thing will probably fail out, and then it's going to be either more of an eyesore or something that you're going to want to either remove or buy another light. So you have to kind of go back in and do this again. I kind of like to do work where it's clean and neat. I don't like to see wires dangling down and going down the side of either your automobile or your high dollar investment camper. So doing the install as best as you can make it looking neat and like it was made from factory that way does kind of make it harder to go back in and do repairs later on, because you put so much great effort into doing it great the first time that you now struggle again to try to redo your work that you've already done. So basically what we're at right now is the screws are loose. We want to get the actual light off from the body of the camper. All of 5 of our screws are now removed. I'm going to take the little light screwdriver and just work it away from the actual body of the camper, and it just comes right off like that. So they didn't really use, and everybody's camper is going to be different, but they didn't really use any sealant to seal it to the actual body of the camper. All we have is the point of entry from the wires, and then these will actually snake out just like this. Just work them out a little bit. Now what I did on the other side is basically where the wires go back into the camper. You can see the wires have been pressed into the foam that they have here. I just kind of notched this out a little bit more, just the first layer, to give the 2 additional wires some extra room, because they do have to make a kind of sharp end to get in there. This is where the hook tool is going to come into play, because they have the crimp ends kind of like they're like a little cap, basically a wire nut, if you'd say. So they're kind of hard to pull out, but we're going to try to get one worked out here, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Here it comes now. So this is the style crimp that they use, which is fine. It's not weather tight, but it's because it's behind the camper wall where you should never really get any type of weather. So there's our one. There's another one here. You have the black tied into the green. And like I said, we're gonna have to use the power probe to test what each wire is actually going to do. Each side will be different colors, so you just want to double check in your particular camper or your particular light what each wire actually is doing. So we have our 2 wires now. White is typically ground. I believe with my cheat sheet I wrote for our other side here, the trailer wiring was the green and the white was the running light. So there's our green and our white, there's our running light. We'll double check that to make sure though. The white was the ground, and then We have, I guess I wrote brown, so we'll see what the red wire is actually tied to when we get in. We just got to pick that last one out. And they give you some extra wire, so it's a lot going into a little space, but there's some room there for you to actually make your connections. And there we go. Okay. So like the other side, we had brown, white, and then a green and the white. On our left side of our camper are wires going to, and you see what I just found? This is why it's always good to kind of really go over your camper, because they're built pretty fast. There's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? They're there for quality, quantity, not quality. So just me playing with these wires, the wire from the ground side has pulled out. Would have that have happened if we didn't touch this? Maybe not. Maybe it would have. The camper goes down the road bouncing all the time. These wires are kind of just hanging in behind the Asdale, and then, you know, things could be bouncing around. This could have came out. Who knows? It would have caused you a light issue, failure. Probably, you know, the thing wouldn't work. Obviously, if it doesn't have a ground, it won't function. So, there again. Now, if you're not into the electrical end of campers and stuff like that, you'd be taking this to a camping repair shop or having a mobile service come out and figure out why you don't have any light function back here. Not only that, is if it did happen on the road and you're not aware of it, now you got Johnny Law pulling you over because he says your trailer lights aren't working. There goes another fee. So it is very frustrating in the camping world of everything with campers, and just the lack of, I want to say craftsmanship, but it's more of the caring ship of it. You know what I mean? These guys put these things together and they never have to see them again. Some of them come back to their factories because they're so jacked up that the end user has got lawyers and they're getting just frustrated mentally, physically, and just financially. So just doing a lot of this stuff, when you get a camper, if it's new or old, you know, it's a pain in the butt to go through and pull down your underbelly to find, you know, wires that maybe weren't connected the greatest. You find a lot of shortcuts, a lot of, you know, just the quality, just the caring of like doing a nice job so that the person that gets this unit can have it for the 10 to 15 to 20 years that they're financing these things for, and they don't last that long. So going the extra mile, doing it yourself, if you're good with DIY and just figuring things out, YouTube, like me doing this video and the thousands of other people that do the videos to help other people, to help them understand certain things and how things work, is just phenomenal. Because, you know, you can watch a video and then it shows you, you know, how your camper or how your motorhome might be wired, and then you might run into the same issue that, you know, a bunch of other people have had. That's why I do a lot of the things that I do to this camper straight out of the gate. I have my neighbor saying, "Oh my God, you're tearing your camper apart. What's going on? You just got it." Well, yeah, you're doing a lot of this stuff, and you really shouldn't have to do this, but, you know, doing it gives you a peace of mind. You know, it's it's just a satisfaction of knowing that you are gonna have something that's better off than when you got it. You put your touch to it, you now know that you can go down the road and everything should be fine. That's not going to always be the case, but there could be other things that come about, wear and tear, animals, critters, and stuff like that. But for the most part, that the campers come to you, you've actually gone really through it, not just putting your stuff in it and looking at little cosmetic things, but actually going through the mechanicals and really looking at, is everything really hooked up well? Is the connection really good? These things, they bounce around, they pull, and they jiggle, and it's just, it's not a house. It's rolling down the road on the four wheels, the six wheels, sometimes just two wheels. So these things are bouncing around a lot, and they're put together so damn fast that it might work for the first time that these lights come on. It might work for the first trip that it comes to the dealership, and then it might work for the first time it comes back to your house. But it could fail, and then now you're trying to camp and you're trying to have a good time, and now you're getting more frustrated because you're finding poor quality craftsmanship when you thought you bought something that was good quality and you spent good hard-earned money on it, and you're making payments every month, and it's just, it kind of makes the whole camping experience of what people see as a camper, it brings it down. It really does. It makes it like people get discouraged really quickly, and they're like, them things are just a box of crap rolling down the road. And some of them are. They're cheap, they're cheaply made, and you get what you get. When you do spend good money, you still kind of get what you get. Um, and it's a shame. But doing this type of stuff will only save you some aggravation later on. It'll potentially save your life. It'll help give you better, peace of mind that you can say, you know, I confidently feel now that the camper should be good going down the road with our family. And then when you go to sleep at night in here, you don't have these electrical gremlins waiting to pop up. And it's just a, a thing that I wanted to touch base with. I know I got a little off topic with doing the wiring of the actual light up here, but I'm glad I found this, because if I have never added this light, I would never have known this light connection was that poor. So doing this, yes, is it a pain in the neck to do this on a cold day? It is, but it's going to pay itself forward when I'm out using my camper and we're out having a good time. I'll know that everything is now good, as far as I know, my knowledge, that this thing's going to work as it needs to. So let's get back into the wiring end of it. I'm sorry I got sidetracked there, but let's get this thing hooked up. Okay, so now that you got your light removed, I have the back of the light kind of opened up here. You're going to want to kind of move these wires and get it pushed back so you can open up a little bit of clearance, because we're going to have to drill a hole for the secondary lights to come through the wiring. So you're just going to want to work your light wires through this opening, and then give yourself some space. So kind of like that. Okay, so now the way our light goes on is it basically goes on like this. So this wire is going to come in on the side. So I am going to drill a little hole right next to here. I want to be very careful that my drill bit does not make contact with my wires. You don't want to have any exposed copper. It'll cause a short, and then your light won't work. Let me get the drill bit and I'll be right back. Also going to take a little notation down here as I did for the right side. I'm going to do my left side, marking what wire goes to what color of the factory light, and then this way, once you cut your connections, this way you'll have a reference to go back to, and so that way you can say, oh, which one went where. Okay, you can either take a picture with your cell phone, that's even better, you know what I mean, but I just do a little cheat sheet right here on my CRS book. Hang tight, I'll be right back. Alright, so I got like a, let's see what size this bit is. This is a 1/4 inch drill bit. You don't really want something too big. You just kind of need it to match the size of the wire that you're going to put through the actual light. You want to watch the wires and your fingers. You don't want to drill into yourself. It would not be a good day. I kind of get the drill bit in there, start slow. Make sure your chuck is tight so that way your drill bit doesn't spin. That's all it takes. You don't need a lot of force, you just want to let the bit do the work. It's just going into plastic, so even if your drill bit was a little bit dull, just give it a little time, keep steady pressure on it, and it will go through. I have to mention, I looked these lights up before starting this project on the eTrailer website that I explained earlier, just in case that I said, or I was damaged the light, either removing the cover or in the installation. I wanted to kind of get an idea of the cost of what a replacement light like this would be, the factory light that came with the Rockwood camper, and I think they were like 25 to 30 bucks. So, and they come with, it actually says this is a lifetime light basically. So if you did buy it from them, like I said, it's not a sponsor of the channel, but just it's a good place to get a lot of camper stuff. So, and they have a lot of good little small quick videos that explain how the light works, some sizes and stuff like that. So if you're doing any upgrading, you can kind of reach out to them, and they have good technical support. I haven't yet used them, but I've heard that they do help out their customers in many ways. So what we want to do, this wire is pretty simple. This one's actually the reverse wire, like I said. We have enough room to kind of sneak this in with the rest of the 3 wires that are here from the factory light. So this one's going to sneak through there. This portion of the wire, we have to kind of now do a little measurement here, and I do this by eye. I'm going to give myself extra wiring, but I want to kind of get an idea of how far back I got to strip this wire to make it sneak in there. Now, I want to keep the insulation of this wire intact. The only part I want to have exposed is once this wire gets inside the light, because then it's protected by the light. It'll be behind this LED light panel, and then you will never even see it. So the only part that we want to keep the insulation on is basically the few inches that it goes into the side of the light. Now each installation will be different, so If you have to route your wire in a different way, you know, make your cut accordingly. But since mine's only going maybe 2 inches, 3 inches, we're not going to really have that much of the actual light harness exposed. So let me get this kind of marked up and measured, and then we'll basically get the light harness here, the insulation stripped off of it, and we'll get it kind of routed in, and then we'll start making our connections for our light, and then that's when we'll start testing. Okay, so we're going to place this up here. It doesn't have to be 100%. I mean, you're just trying to remember where the light is, and then I'm going to say that I'm going to leave everything to about right here. So from here down, I'm going to cut myself some wire about to right there. This way I can shove a lot of this back in there when we make the connections, and there's still enough wire to do that. You don't want to cut yourself short. This way it makes stuffing the wires back a little bit easier. So let's do that. Okay, so we're gonna say we're gonna cut it back to about here. So now is a point of no return. Literally. Okay. Here comes another dangerous part. Razor blades makes me very nervous. Please wear anti-cut gloves if you're a little shaky or if you're a little nervous about cutting yourself. This is another area where you really got to take your time and go slow. Unless you're very versed in using razor blades all the time, I would say be very careful. This is something you definitely want adult supervision with, and you don't want to go to the doctors or the hospital. So we're going to go right about here, and we're just going to make a nice little piercing. You don't want to dig into the harness too much, because if you cut into these wires, you could potentially short it out or sever it and you not know it. So we're just going to break the outer shield of this insulation. We're just going to go all the way down to the end here. Using a new razor blade is very key in this installation. Where we got to the end, I'm actually going to just go around the wire to give it like an end point. Again, you don't want to cut too deep. You just want to kind of like break the skin. Just going to go down one more time over top of my line, nice and slow. fingers are cold and old, a little small screwdriver comes in handy here. This rubber can get kind of stiff when it gets cold. I use the little screwdriver to kind of help separate the outer jacket of the wiring harness, and then just work it around a little bit. Once you kind of get it started, you can kind of like peel it open. There you go. And you just work this up to the point where you made your little end cut. Just another note, not every light bar wiring is going to be a certain gauge. Some are very, very thin, some are a little bit thicker. So pulling on the wires, you want to just take a little caution, because you can, I guess, stretch the wire and then it could sever it inside and you not know it, and then you'll have a light problem, cussing yourself out. Fortunately, these are pretty good size wire, so I'm just going to pull these wires up to the end where I made my little slice around the outer part. Once you get to that point, you should be able to kind of peel it around. If it doesn't seem like it's going, you might have to take another little cut at it to help it break off cleanly. But again, just be careful of your wires. You don't want to cut into your wiring. There you go. There's the outer jacket that you can throw away. We're done with that. Okay. I've noticed in the other light and this light, I don't know what it is. It's probably not good for me. There's a white powder. I don't know if that's something that is just left over when they mold the insulation around the actual internal wires, but just to be aware for yourself. Okay, so now what we have to do is, now that we made our hole, you want to make sure there's no plastic residue left inside the light, because then you might see it from the outside. So you want to make sure you clean up all your little, burrs and little chips of plastic. That way it's good and clean, and there's nothing that's going to make it look a little dirty inside, basically. Give it a little. Okay, so now the way we're going to do this is we're feeding our wires, and we still have to strip these, but we're going to feed the 4 wires from our harness through our hole that we drilled with our 1/4-inch drill bit. I'm just going to push them around right out the back. And now we're going to take our reverse lead. Same thing, it's going to follow in the same bunch of wires into the light through the side. You just want to kind of get all your excess of wire and slack pushed through, so you can kind of get everything dialed in and get it beatened up. So this one's actually going to share the remaining space of the 3 wires that already go through the back of the housing. Now this is your only white wire that you don't want to get confused with being a ground. A lot of the camper wiring, in most campers, not all campers, but most campers, they use white for either neutral or ground. So you don't want to tie this one into the ground. It won't work. So we're just going to snake this through. Just take your time. Make sure you don't have a snag. Okay, you just want to make sure everything's pretty much the same length. You don't want one long one. So then, now that you have it, this will take a little bit of finesse to get everything lined back up and get everything bolted back in. So now that we have that, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little notation of what wires go to what, because now we have to actually do the cutting and reconnecting of our new light bar wires to our factory homes. So let me grab a pen, we'll be right back. Okay, so white went to the white on this left side. So we're going to write left side. Our red from our factory light went to the red wire. So on this side, everything is the same. Got a couple of hot rodders out there on the road. And then our last is our green, and then basically we have a white and green, so it's a little dual color code. And they have that tied into the black. That's basically left side what you have. It just puts it down there for a reference. Like I said, when you cut these wires, sometimes you get called into the house, or you might take a dinner break and you forget, and then you don't know which wire goes to where. So the 3 wires, 4 wires coming from our actual light bar itself. Like I said, in the last one, I was able to determine on the Opt7 lights that the blue wire is going to be the ground. So we're going to tie the blue, in my scenario, into the white. Not the white for the reverse, but the white for the light. So that's going to be tied together with the rest of these lights, or these wires, I'm sorry. So that will all be connected together. That will be all ground. Then my black and my red, like I showed you, are the turn signal left and right on the light itself. So we're going to twist those two together, and we're going to tie that into what I believe is the red. The red will basically be the turn signal, and then vice versa, when the brake lights are on, it'll light up full bright also. And then our last one, second to last one, is the green, and that will be tied in with the green for what it's the running lights basically. And then the only thing left is our reverse light, which in this particular camper, we don't have a reverse light there. Like I said earlier in the video, I had to run the separate wire coming from the front junction box back here. It is underneath the camper here. Rockwood does, in their signature series, they kind of cap over the outside of the the underbelly, and the wires are concealed in there. So it makes it a little bit harder, but I'll set you up once we're actually under there and we're making this connection. I did the connection over there, so we're just going to join those two together, and then that will be pretty much completing the whole install. You can do this without pulling your underbelly down, just accessing some of these wires sometimes, depending on how well they ran the trailer wiring, can be hard or it can be easy. Some, manufacturers don't put underbelly under the camper and you have full access to see everything. Some do, and that's where they hide everything. All their quick fixes, all their quick installation is all hidden in there. Nobody ever goes in there. They don't want to go in there, and that's where all the nightmares are. So let's get these wires stripped and we'll get them hooked up, and then we'll do a connection at the truck, and we'll do a quick test to see if everything's functioning the way it needs to function. So hang tight, let's do this, and I'll be right back. Kind of just really make sure they're twisted well together, and then I use these button cap connectors as well. One added thing that you could do that I would normally do if this was outside and exposed more or less to the elements is, once you have a good solid crimp in here, the best part of these open caps on the bottom is you can inject some silicone that will help weather seal out the copper, and then it won't corrode, and it will also give it a little extra bite to help hold the wire so it's not relying on the actual crimp. So let's do that. This is our ground. We have to go ahead and we have to break our connections here. When it comes to taking old connections off, or new connections, but previous, owner or just manufacturer connections, I don't like to cut any more wire back than you have to. I like to leave as much as on the wire as I can, because you never know how much you're going to be going back in here, and if you kind of keep cutting this back short, you're going to run out of wire. Not to say that you're going to be doing this a lot, you don't only want to do it one time, but you want to just try to leave as much wire as you can. This way, if you make a mistake, you're not already super short. There's plenty of void space back here that these wires have room to hang out for the life of the camper. So let's get these wires trimmed, and then we'll start making our connections, and we'll basically get this thing lit up. I always like to just take a little bit of extra time and twist the wire. So what I'm doing here is basically getting the fish tape ready. I had to put on my glasses so I can see a little bit better. So we're just going to work this fish tape up to the hole in the back of the camper. This is another step that takes a little bit of time. It never goes smooth. Sometimes you get lucky. So this is another good time to have that little pick tool. That way you can get in there with that particular tool, grab your fish tape, and kind of help it go through the hole that you're trying to get your wire down through. We're going to focus on that and see if we can get lucky. What I'm trying to do is just find the end of the fish tape here with the light. This does take a little bit of time. Like I said, sometimes you get lucky right away, and you can grab it no problem. I'm actually going to get a little bit better light than this. You just kind of want to see if you can even see the end of the fish tape. A lot of times guys will use a bright colored type of tape that basically is easy to see in a dark opening, and you have to kind of work the fish tape in a way, you have to direct it basically. I'm going to pull it down and restart. You want to flex it in a direction that you really are going for. There it is. So making sure you kind of guide your fish tape in a direction of where you're trying to access is big. Because I mean, you can have it in the right area, but it just not be in that optimal part of the wall cavity, and you'll be getting upset even more. That's what else is good about this pick tool. It has a little finger, you can grab it. So once you have a good bite on it, you just want to help work it through the opening. And there you go. If you give it too much tension, sometimes it can jam and then you'll be fighting it. So now that we're through the actual light itself, we're going into the actual hole the manufacturer has done for us. We want to run our wire so it doesn't slip off with inside the cavity where there's no way to get it. We want to make sure that we put a little loop through there and twist this around. And then we're going to add a little electrical tape. You don't want to go overkill here, but you don't want to underdo it. So I like to leave myself a little tail. That way it's easier to remove. Sometimes that real good electrical tape becomes a pain in the neck to try to get it to come off. So we are routed. There's no tangles in the wire, so now we can easily pull our fish tape down, get it into the cavity where we need to take it through into the underbelly area, and then we're pretty much in the home stretch, everybody. We're going to basically get all our wires tucked into our opening there, and then kind of lay in our now external wiring to the side of the light. And we will add a little extra silicone behind here to give it just one extra added benefit of waterproofing it. Asdel is very good with being non-delaminating because there's no wood material in it, but this is still an opening to the inside of your camper where there is wood particles. So like I said in the beginning and many times in this video, anytime you conceal the water out, it's only going to make these things last longer. So let's get this done and get this video over with. I know it's been a long one, and I thank everybody for hanging in there. Again, this is the Crazy Maydays YouTube channel. We're very new to the YouTube. Like everybody, we've been watching many YouTube videos, decided to get into it and give it a try. So when you're working your fish tape down, you want to just work it nice and easy, give it a little pull, you got to give it a wiggle sometimes, and just work it through. Once you get it moved in just the right sweet spot, it'll come right out. And now here's the other end of our fish tape. So what we're going to do now is just continually ease this wire down and through. This way we're not getting tangled or hung up. And I always like to leave a little bit of extra here. Once you get it you want it just to basically match what extra wire you have here. Um, in the event that you ever have to do another light, you'll have extra wire, and the reinstallation of the next light will only be easier because everything is already now here. Your reverse feed, everything is kind of, you know, basically in this spot, and you can basically remove your old light and reinstall the new one. That's not going to say that the wire colors might change in the future, but at least everything should still be here. And if you made all your connections very well, everything should be good and clean, and you'll be able to go back in and do another reinstallation of your new light. Okay, so now that we have plenty of extra here, I feel we're good with that. I'm going to basically just kind of work these in nice and easy. You can do them one at a time. If you try to jam them all in there, it gets cramped. So you just work them in. I like to take the end of a nice soft either hose and just basically give it a little push. You don't really want to use like a screwdriver, because if your wire only has a thin layer of insulation material, you could kind of like pierce the wire, and it would open it up for corrosion or possibly shorting out. So using something soft is always better than a sharp object. And just like that, everything gets tucked in there. And now we're going to kind of lay all this back in. You want to just go nice and easy here. Make sure you don't pinch any of your wires. We're going to blow some of this dust off. Let me bring the light up here so you guys can see a little bit better. We're running out of daylight. Okay. So what I like to do now is I want to just add a little kind of additional silicone here, just to help if there's any water that ever gets behind this sealant, that it's always going to have that extra layer of sealing protection behind the light and not get entered into the camper. Let me grab a caulk gun and we'll get right back to this. There's a lot of different sealants out there. Silicone is not always the greatest type of material to use in a camper, especially when exposed to the elements outside. But as far as just sealing up holes in, maybe the underside, or just in general, basically in an area where it's not going to be exposed to the elements, it's a good thing to add. And I always put a little extra silicone in these screw holes in case you get any moisture buildup inside the light. But there's other material out there to use. I use it's called an RV ProFlex, I believe. That is a better sealant for doing anything like with your sidewalls where your corner trims are, behind any kind of screw plates and stuff like that. It is just more or less made for sealing the outside of the camper along your upper gutter material. Okay, so again, you want to go very easy with these screws using one of these impact guns. A little bit of torque goes a long way. We're going to basically get this light laid in here. I'm trying to keep everything nice and tight. Put a screw in. I like to just match up all the screw holes so you're not making anything additional. So hang tight, we're going to screw these in, and basically I'll bring you back as soon as we get the light ready to bolt back up. Alright, so before we make sure we screw all these down, I want to really get my wire angled and laid into the light just like I need it to. Make sure you put your original light template back the way it was. This had the mushroom part of it up and the squared off end down. Your light might be different, but just either refer back to a picture, or this kind of has a set of dowel pins that you can't really mess it up. So alright, that looks good. 90. Sorry if I'm blocking your view there. Get the little screws here. Get these started. Line up our pin. You want to be very careful with this. This is kind of a like electronic board. There's not a lot of beefiness built into it. We're on our pin there. On our dowel pin down here. Okay, now that that is done, we're just going to go ahead and snug up our wires a little, or our screws. Remember, very light torque. good and sealed around there now. So what I do here is basically I just run a little die grinder through the side here where the light wiring harness will basically intersect with the light when I go over top of the harness part. So I just clearance this out. I use a little mini carbide. I go nice and slow, and I just get this kind of notched out so that way our light cover can now reattach and everything will be all weather protected. Once I get that pretty much dialed in, then I'll go around with that RV ProFlex sealant, and we'll just go a nice thin bead all the way around here, sealing the light cap to the actual internal part of the light. I just want to thank everybody. We're running out of daylight. I'll come back to this in another video to show you the final install of how everything looks, and I'll give you a little demonstration of our full rear lighting setup once everything is lit, and it'll